Denmark sending a clear message to Donald Trump. Greenland is not for sale. The European country has put more troops on the Arctic island, with Canadian troops in talks to join. Let's go to Bob Ray on this, former Canadian ambassador to the United Nations. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Nice to talk to you.
Should Canada send troops to Greenland?
Well, my personal opinion is, and I'm now free to give it, that I'm no longer working for the government, is I certainly think if Canada expects to have the support of the Europeans in our challenges that we're currently having with the United States, I think it would be wise for us to engage with the Europeans in Greenland. I think this kind of solidarity is going to be increasingly important as we deal with President Trump.
So this would be essentially a symbolic show, right? It would be a small contingent that gets sent. Should it be more strategic?
Well, I mean, it is strategic. I mean, the strategy we have to pivot to is a strategy where we understand that we cannot rely on the United States to be a rational partner because of how everything has unfolded. And I think that the notion somehow that Canada is going to just sit back and watch while what happens in Greenland happens that's not a smart strategy. The smartest thing for us to do is recognize the world has changed. The president has told us this. The ambassador of the United States has told us this. And so we have to take the steps that we need in order to advance the security interests of Canada in the broadest sense. And that certainly includes stronger relationship with NATO, stronger relationship with Europe, and that's got to be part of the picture of what we need to do.
I guess I'm asking, should it be more and should it be faster? Instead of sending, a dozen men and women from Canada, should we be sending a larger group? Should we start sending other things and putting other things in place in Greenland for military action?
Well, I think what we're going to need to do is concentrate on our own situation in our own Arctic when it comes to the kind of resources that you're talking about. But I think it's important for Canada to be at the table with the Europeans as they discuss, well, what are the security steps that can be taken? Canada can't separate itself from that conversation. We have to be part of that conversation. And what we end up doing in Greenland is going to be part of a bigger challenge that we face, which is to deal with the security of the Arctic overall and ensuring that we don't go down the road with President Trump, which is the road he's taking with Greenland. And I think we have to do everything we can to change the president's mind and the tenor of what he's saying, because if he's really interested in the security of Greenland, then he has to be interested in NATO. He has to be interested in advancing the interests of NATO. And he has to be interested in working with us as a partner and with other countries, Scandinavian countries, for example, that have a huge interest in the Arctic. He can't just wander through and say, we're going to take over this country and that country. He has to do it as part of a strategy with other countries.
What does this do to NATO? Isn't the strength of NATO already dissipating if you have Europe and the U.S. In a dispute and perhaps a confrontation over Greenland?
Well, whose fault is that? I mean, this is a manufactured crisis, manufactured by the President of the United States and his advisors. It has nothing to do with the real situation on the ground, and it has nothing to do with what are really the security interests of Greenland or of the Arctic more broadly. If the president were serious about addressing those issues, he would be talking to all of us about what we are all going to need to do to deal with the current situation with the Russians and with the Chinese and with others, and to have not only telling people what to do, but listening to what other people think we should do and understanding what other people are prepared to do. That's called a normal diplomatic military conversation among allies. What the president is doing has nothing to do with that. It has to do with shifting ground from one strategy to another, from one target to another, from one situation to another, from one press conference to another, from one tweet to another. It has nothing to do with what is normal in life. And so we have to respond to that situation as best we can. But when people talk about the crisis between Europe and the United States, between NATO and the United States, this is a crisis that's been created by the President of the United States. No one else. He's the only one who's creating this crisis. No one else is creating this crisis. Not even the Russians or the Chinese are creating the kind of crisis that he's responding to. And by the way, nobody's happier than the Russians and the Chinese at the steps that the president is taking, which make NATO's life much more difficult and pose an existential challenge, not only to Canada, but to, frankly, all the countries in the alliance who are now having to figure out what can we do to protect ourselves, not from the Russians and the Chinese, but what can we do to protect ourselves from the irrationality of this president? And that's the challenge that we face.
I do want to get your response to the texts that were shared that went between the leader of Norway and the American president, Donald Trump, saying he doesn't need to think purely about peace now since he didn't get the peace prize.
Well, I mean, this is like Saturday Night Live. This is not taking us to a rational place. I didn't get the Nobel Prize. I'm not writing any letters to the Prime Minister of Norway. The prize is given out by a committee. It has nothing to do with the government of Norway. Everyone knows that. And it has nothing to do with anything other than a decision that's made by the Nobel Prize Committee. Given the president's attitude to Canada and the threats that he's making about us, I think most Canadians would say he doesn't deserve the prize. But what we think is irrelevant. What is relevant is engaging in a rational way with the life of the world rather than fixating on whether or not you got a prize. I mean, this is behavior we expect in a kindergarten, and it's not something we expect in dealing with the President of the United States.
Yeah, I do have to leave it there, sir. I'm out of time. Bob Racer, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.